2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday. It's 10:30 Eastern time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning and good to be back with you. Although I have a little bit, and I think you do too, I have a little travel kind of work hangover, right? I mean, it's just my hair is looking rough. My body's looking rough. My eyes are looking rough. I know it's Saturday morning. I have literally I slept as long as I could this morning, just kind of rolled out. So if you're going to jump in and you're looking rough, it's okay. We do. Well, I do. I won't speak for Dave, but feeling kind of rough, so maybe it's
this is where headphones come in handy. Although now my headphones have smushed my hair down, so I'm doing okay. But I had the thing. I was in Vegas last week, and the first night I got home, completely crashed, dead. In fact, that was really interesting because it's amazing how much you can do on adrenaline. Because I was getting like 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and then you would go to wherever, which you typically required walking some more, even though you just did 10,000 steps at the show. You were standing for 8 hours. You're just going and going and going. And then I get home. I drag my suitcase up to the stairs. I unpack it. I go back downstairs. I make a little dinner, and I start watching some Game of Thrones. And I go to get up, and it's like my legs are like, no, I'm sorry. We're done. You just sit. And then last night, I don't know if it was like delayed jet lag or whatever, but I was looking at my app this morning. It said you slept, like your sleep percentage was 49%, which is horrendous. And I'm like, I was tossing and turning in that whole 9 yards. So
that's the hardest part of traveling, right? When when you get back the day after, and then if there's a podcast that you owe, you got to get it out. And you're like, oh, I got to get this thing done. I think that's for weekly podcasters. That's the hardest part about travel, is it can throw. And you're a conference guy. You go to a lot of conferences. Yeah. That can really kind of throw the whole body off if you're not used to standing around and you're standing around for 8 hours or 8 or 10 hours. Right? That's hard on your body.
That's what got me. Is I was like, I used to teach for 8 hours a day and stand up and lead the whole class. And like after the first day, I'm like, wait, what? It was like, my legs are just like, sit down.
No, I have a stand-up desk at work now. I got a stand-up desk. And so I've been trying to stand up more. And like you stand up for an hour and then you walk and you're like, oh, this hurts.
Yeah.
So it's anytime there's I think just a change. I spent the last week in New Orleans and I got home late Friday night, and no podcasting. This was all work related, unfortunately. Although I met somebody at the conference, first time met him, and she was talking, and she's a PhD and she does all this really cool education stuff. And I said, do you have a podcast? And she's like, well, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, you need to start a podcast. And Dave, I went full Dave Jackson on her. I just started grinding down like, okay, we need to get some episodes. You're going to give me 10 titles. And at one point she's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, but you should have a podcast. So so maybe, as a podcaster, maybe every place has an opportunity to launch a podcast.
Well, that's what was fun is the first couple days we had some people stop by, and it was kind of interesting because I don't get the phrase, we own a couple radio stations and we're looking to get into podcasting. I didn't hear that at PodFest. So a whole different kind of beast. But I had a few people it was like one person, but they were going to be the person running the podcast for the company. And it was interesting because I know my last day was Wednesday, and there was a good hour that I just did the School of Podcasting. They're like, what's the best length of your podcast? And what's the best microphone? It was just all those questions. And this one guy actually stole my chair out of the booth and would just sat down and started taking notes. I was like, that's all right. I didn't need that. So
yeah, you get kind of a different audience. I was telling you in pre-show, we're starting a new podcast to Gallup, which is really cool. Like, this is organic. I didn't do anything to get this thing started. Like, it showed up in a contract and like, oh yeah, we're going to do 2 years worth of podcasts with this customer.
Nice.
Like, really? So, well, one, that's really cool that we have embedded the concept or the idea of, you should if you're going to create something and you want to communicate it, you should create a podcast for it, right? So they just did that automatically. Again, I was not consulted in the contract at all. It just showed up, which is super cool and a little maddening because I think we maybe could have got a little more for it. But and then second, I've got a producer who's doing this, and they've got a team of writers and folks who will do the interviews. And all I had to do is help them get the platform started. And it was super cool. Yeah, I was like, this is great. You know, my job is to compete with NPR. That's from a Gallup perspective. We want to be an NPR competitor. So it's kind of fun to see this. We'll see how it goes. It just started, so I mean, it could be a total train wreck, but it's fun to see it go.
Have you practiced talking like this, Jim? If you're going to be an NPR,
I bought really expensive microphones, and I told everyone, okay, make sure you only record when you have a cold, so we get the really deep voice kind of thing going on. Yeah. So no, it's news related. That's kind of the NPR side of things. So it's kind of news related.
Well, in the chat room, Royce is saying, "Are we liking the StreamYard thing?" Here's one of the things I just realized I liked about it, because we're probably going to switch topics here in a minute, but I can look up in the corner and see how long we've been doing this. So let's say I want to talk about show notes, and I bring something up. I can look up and see that we're at 6 minutes and 15 seconds. So I could make a little note and say, hey, about that time. So when I go back later to edit the show, it's going to be a ton easier. One thing we should mention that we are here every Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you want to jump on in, you can. It's just askthepodcastcoach.com/join, or if you are listening to this on YouTube or whatever, we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. The bad news is I keep doing this. I put the Trello card, like it could not be more directly, like my microphone is right in the way. It says, here, Dave, just move the microphone. I asked a couple, this is from Chris Saunders. I asked a couple of folks privately, but I figured I'd also throw it out here. This is in a Facebook group, by the way. He says, my show is about a specific superhero movie franchise. In the current show notes, the setup for that is 2 or 3 sentences, including the movie, and just a list of topics we covered. I really feel like there's a better way. So if you guys were part of my team, and there's a whole thing else we got to talk about today. Everybody seems to be looking for a team. And show notes was your responsibility. What format would you use? And I kind of looked at him like going, well, if he said, I have a list of topics we covered, the only thing else I can think of would be links to anything else in the show. So I think he's on the right track there. More
words for SEO.
Yeah, that would be it. So don't get too...
I like to write when I write. I don't know how you do it, Dave, but I'm an outline writer. So I like to do the outline first, and then I fill in each one of the topics. I fill in a few things, and then I start tackling the paragraphs. So it's kind of this 3-run approach. So outline, fill in a few bullet points, then fill in the paragraphs. I find that makes show note writing a little bit more tolerable, or writing in general. I wrote my first blog for Gallup the other day. It's amazing. I podcasted for them for 6 years. I've never written on my own blog. I mean, this is a blog I promote. I've had students do all the custom CSS around it. We spent a lot of time talking about it. I've edited tons of it, but I've never written my own, and I just had something to say, so I wrote it. But that kind of helps me work through that process. Dave, do you have when you're writing show notes, do you have any tricks that you do to kind of help speed it up?
I kind of exactly what you did. I usually start off with, okay, what are the bullet points? And then it's a matter of, okay, how can I explain this without writing a gazillion words? Mm-hmm. And then I get done and look to make sure I have at least 300 words. Or, to me, it's like, here's what the show's about. Here's the main bullet points. And then links. That's the thing that there was an article on.
You're not writing for humans anymore, right? You're writing for the bots. Unfortunately,
I try to do both.
Yeah,
because Google doesn't buy anything, but they do bring people that do. So it's kind of a like,
it
doesn't do any good if these guys show up and then there's it attracts the Googles, but then the humans get there and go ugh. So there was an article in the Podcast Business Journal. And I saw Ed Ryan. I saw him at NAB. Nice guy. Also, the publisher was there. And they published an article on some study in Florida that basically said the number one place to find YouTube, or the number one way people are consuming podcasts is YouTube, to which we all went, sorry, I don't think so. I was like, what? YouTube? What? So the next day, first of all, before I lose my point here, there was no link in that article to the original study from some people in Florida or whatever. And I guess from what I understand, they were kind of saying, well, these new kids of today call everything a podcast.
Yeah.
So if it's audio on the internet, if it's whatever, if it's, stuff on YouTube, it's a podcast, which of course the curmudgeon crew came out and said, if it doesn't have an RSS feed, it's not a podcast. So, and I'm kind of part of that crew. So I get that. Yes. But my whole thing that to get back to the original point of show notes, there was no link to the original study because I wanted to go read it and see exactly what they were talking. But boy, a lot of people were losing their mind over that. And in a way, kind of like just saying, yeah, that's a bunch of malarkey or whatever. But I really would have appreciated the original.
It's good to have the links. I mean, it's good to have links in there. It's good to probably not just have links.
Yeah.
I get a little lazy sometimes and it's a link fest. It's just like, okay,
right.
Here's the things we talked about. Link. That's probably lazy and probably not great, to have it. If you're going to have a list of links for that reason, and it's just going to be a list of links, that's probably fine there. But I think it is good to have have a few words, have actual sentences and some paragraphs in there. I think the number of readers back to your show notes, though, is pretty small. I don't think you get a ton to come back. And again, it depends on your genre, how much you push it. If your site, I know folks who just load up on graphics now, and you got to be really careful if those graphics aren't tied together with a brand or with if they're all kinds of different colors and stuff, that's super jarring for your audience when they get there. Just look at any news site that's trying to monetize their site now. It's awful, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I love the ones where it's like, you won't believe what insert star from the 70s looks like now. And you're like, I want to see what Linda Carter looks like. So you go to it and it's Marsha Brady and you're like, that's not Linda Carter. And you go to the next one and you're like, that's, I don't know, Jacqueline Smith. And you're like, and you go through and then each time, and now they're having a thing where they're having a video load in the bottom right-hand corner. So I have learned just to ignore those, but yeah, it's, and you can't do the thing. You used to be able to cheat in the past. You could go print and it would show you all of this
whole thing.
Yeah. And you can't now.
They found ways. Well, it's just be careful. Cause it's, you don't want to overwhelm your graphics are great. And we went through a period in the middle 2000s where it's like, oh, you got to get graphics on your site and every, pictures mean everything. And you got to get, every article has to have a picture for social, which is all true, by the way. It's all true.
Yeah.
But we've gotten a little too carried away. And I've gone to some sites where, below the fold, it is just graphic after graphic after graphic. And you're like, and especially if they're not tied together, or they're brightly colored, or they're not tied together in some way, it becomes completely overwhelming for your user.
Yes. Jason is saying, Jason has a very good point. He says, for the millennials, Dave, I need to let them know who the heck Linda Carter is.
Wonder Woman.
It's Wonder Woman, the original Wonder Woman. Who, she was not ugly. But one other thing, going back to,
hey, let's be, hold on before we go off this, not super fit to our standards today. Today she would probably get body shamed by this current, our current culture that body shames people for not having the perfect kind of thing. So,
that is true. If you compare Wonder Woman from, that probably was the late 70s, I'm thinking at this point.
Yeah. I think so.
And whatever the current Wonder Woman's name, who is thin and petite and, so, oh boy, the chat room is just geeking out. But going back to getting people to your website.
Yeah.
Number one reason I go back to somebody's website is when they say link, like James Cridlin. There was a study, such and such, blah, 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 blah. Links are in the show notes or in our newsletter. I got to hang with James a little bit. It's weird because he's one of those guys that when you're talking to James Cridlin, there's a voice in your head that goes, it's James. That guy sounds just like James Cridland. It's crazy.
It is James Cridland.
Yeah, but and cool. I had my news source there. I had James Cridland, and oh crap, the newsworthy. I'm forgetting her name. I can't help it's gonna drive me nuts. But it's a really cool podcast. It's like 4 minutes, and that's one of those. My favorite podcast is Stories that we got at the end of the year, and a friend of mine said I really like this. It's like the best. It's just like here's the news. There's no commentary. It's just this and that. And then she does one interview on Thursday, and I just started listening, and I was like, oh, okay. So,
hey, one I've been listening to, a brand new podcast, fairly new. They're, I don't know, 6 weeks in maybe, is from WordFence, and it's Think Like a Hacker from WordFence.
Nice.
And so if you are WordPress centric, which 90% of us are in a lot of ways, and you want to be scared out of your mind about how unsecure your WordPress and all the crazy hacking that goes on around WordPress, WordFence, let's just to get this, it's disclosed. They are a plugin. They're a security plugin for WordPress.
But that's a great use of a podcast, though. Think about it. Who's your target audience? You want your target audience to be scared out of they're wetting their pants about being hacked. Oh, by the way, we happen to sell something that you might.
They almost never sell it on the show, though. This is the great part about it. It's by WordFence, but you almost never hear. Every once in a while, they'll say, "Well, like we help, we help with that." But they really are getting down to the issues. There's been a couple crazy, and not just WordPress issues, but kind of web or internet issues with hacking and things that are going on Stuxnet and some of those other things that were talked about. So if you're into that cybersecurity, but even if you're just kind of concerned about securing your own WordPress instance or want to know what's going on in the WordPress community, these guys are, because they're a plugin provider, they're super plugged into the WordPress community at WordPress.org and everything that's going on there and kind of the players around it. So that's been a fun one. It's not, I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna, it's not done particularly well. It's not very smooth. It's not polished. They're just, it's just two people talking to each other, and then they'll do an interview. And the interviews are kind of chopped together, but the info is so good. Dave, this is one of those where you say, if your info is really good, your audience will forgive you for a lot of the, and I will. I don't care. They have such good info on that thing. So
is it new? Do you think that's why it's maybe a little?
Yeah, they're just getting started, and they're developers. Like these aren't media people. These are the ones writing the code. And I just don't think I just think they need more time. And we all sound bad on our first 10 episodes, right?
Well,
and it's not that they sound bad. It's just a little herky-jerky, kind of not as smooth as you would expect in some, from maybe from another podcast that you listen to. But the content is just drop dead dynamite. So,
well, speaking of sounding bad, I've been doing the podcast rodeo show probably for a year now. Probably one of the worst examples. I could not, but like to where I was like, I can't believe what I just heard. And I reviewed the Eric Ains show. The Woman in the Tube picked it. And it's an actual radio show. And my favorite was you join this. If there's no intro, no, like, welcome to the Eric Ains show. We talk. No, and you literally joined like mid sentence. Like you hit play and it's like, and then you hear the guy start to explain. They're trying to compare softball to football, and then they go to their guest and they're like, so who do you think is the quarterback in softball? And you hear and they're like, hold on, wait just a second, wait, we got it, okay, go again. And then you hear the guy go, oh, it's definitely the catcher. And I'm like, wait a minute, this was a radio show. Somebody picked this clip to be the podcast, and they said, let's leave that part in where the microphone. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, so, I have no idea how new or old that person was, but it was different to say the least.
Well, you can edit. It's a shame when you can edit those things out and you don't. And I've been guilty. I do a Live to the Hard Drive podcast with Home Gadget Geeks, and we almost never edit anything out. But then again, we've done 400 episodes of it, and we don't have generally those kinds of problems.
Exactly.
We're not testing things out like you and I are testing things out all the time live just to see. Well, okay, you kind of want to hear some of the problems that you're having, right? I mean, it's part of the gig. So
yeah. One of the things we definitely don't want to edit out, though, and we'll be doing this a couple of times today because we skipped the first of the month because I wasn't here. But I want to thank everybody who's been our awesome supporters at askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And we're talking about Greg over at debtshepherd.com, Glenn the Geek Hebert at horseradionetwork.com, Josh Rivers over at podcastingexperiments.com, Max Trescott at aviationnewstalk.com, Shane at Spybrary, Carrie a Bond over at keywestperspective.com/podcast. That is a podcast about the island life and the people who live it. And my buddy Ronsley down in Australia at Amplify Media Group. Check him out at mustamplify.com. And Carl White down in the Carolinas. Check him out, Life in the Carolinas podcast.com. That's Carolinas with an S, Life in the Carolinas podcast.com. And Kim Craggy, the one and only, Don't Be Fooled by Cheap Imitations at Toastmasters101.net. And in a bit, we'll come back and talk about our $10 supporters. But I got free stuff.
Yeah, what'd you get?
Here's the thing. I didn't realize.
What would you get? This is like a new segment. What you get at NEB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I walked in and ran into the guy from Focusrite who said, I want to sponsor your show again. And I'm like,
they're Scarlet, right? They're the Scarlet.
Yeah.
Scarlet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was cool. And then I walked over and there was a Samson booth. And I said, hey, I'm assuming you guys know this, but the Samson Q2U is like the hottest mic in podcasting right now. I said, somebody has figured out that apparently there's less hand-holding noise than the ATR 2100.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And blah, 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 blah. And he said, would you be interested in maybe doing a giveaway? And I go, I would absolutely love to give my audience free stuff. So that was cool. And then I was talking with Alan Tipper or Tepper. Oh, and I can't remember his podcast name. Really nice guy. He's the guy that's all about the 48 kilohertz thing, which makes sense because he does a lot of video. Super nice guy. And I'm talking to him, and we're talking about boom arms. And there's the Heil PL2. And I said, and then there's like the newer, right? The newer $15 that doesn't, it's $15. You get what you pay for. And I said, I really would love to see a Samson boom arm. I said, because they're somewhere in like the $50 range.
$49.99 would be great.
Yeah. And so I go over to the booth and I go, oh, this is so stupid. I go, I'm assuming you guys are using your own boom arms. And Dave said, running to get the link to the boom arm. And they said, yeah, actually we are. And so I was like, oh, great. And he goes, I love this. I'm like looking at it. I go, this looks a lot like, the Heil PL2. I said, except it doesn't have the what do you call it? The thing for the cable. So your cables, and instead they give you
cable routing.
Yeah, there's no cable routing. And so I think, that's the Amazon link. I'm actually back on Amazon again, just because I enjoy getting kicked off. But here's the thing, still in the plastic. We'll do an unboxing. This thing is
look at that.
Is it $59?
No, it's 64, but
64.
I bet Amazon will discount it down.
Yeah, but they have there is a smaller version. I think that's a little cheaper, but it's not cheap. I mean, as he said, pulling it out of the bag, this is all metal. Boy, their shrink wrap definitely works. But this thing is like a major clip.
Yeah,
and
looks good.
Then they give you a desk clip, so if you want to mount it permanently, you got that. And then it's solid. It looks a lot like
that new car smell.
Yeah. See, we've got some wire ties here, and it's like, now we're talking. So so I will be plugging this in later today and replacing, because I literally this one is another one. The only reason this one doesn't fly away is because I've got a RE320.
Are they both newers that you're on?
Yeah, I think this was newer before newer was around. It's just your typical $20 boom arm.
Zach in the chat room says Knox and Blue also make arms. Go ahead.
The blue one, I have a friend of mine at if you go to brightlinepodcast.com, and I asked him, I said, man, what boom arm are you using? And he said he was using the $99 one from Blue, because he's got SM57s. And he said the Heil one, somehow, how the SM7B, has that kind of connection, and he says it kind of goes in. It doesn't fit well with that.
Looks like the blue compass has a downward facing connector to it, because it's really meant to screw the Blue Yeti up to it from the bottom. That's their compass version anyway. So it looks like those are made specifically for the Yetis and that Yeti connection. That's a big, listen, that thing is like the Starship Enterprise when you put it on your boom arm. Yeah.
And it has like a tray for the cable. And then what it has, where the Heil boom arm has like this little plastic thing that goes over it, the Blue microphone has like these little tabs, and you basically push it down through the tab, and then the tab comes up to hold it in place. So there's like a little trough, and I was like, So
Knox is in that spot, by the way. That Knox gear it's like a step above the Neewer at $49.99, but I don't know if that Knox looks a lot like a Neewer. I think if I was, or Inno gear, that's in that same category. I think if I was going to go with a Knox versus I think the Knox is overpriced at $49 because it looks like the Neewer. The spring is on the outside.
Yeah.
That
to me is somewhat, I don't know if it's fair or not, but for me, kind of the definition of like a cheap one is when I see the springs on the outside. I just kind of go, I mean, this one here is, there's the spring there.
Hey, there's your pictures.
Yeah,
that's where they went.
They're on the door. You can see Miss Eileen is right. I keep punching Miss Eileen right in the face. I don't mean to, but she's right above the door.
Yeah. If you're gonna have a boom arm and you're not gonna move it around very much, and you're on a budget, those Neewers are perfect.
Yep.
Right? They're just
really work. Yeah. As long as you aren't using an ATR 2100 that weighs nothing, or you just need to put some weight on.
You got to put a weight kind of piece on there. Hey, my Rode, I've got the Rode one here and at the office.
Yeah.
And the one in the office is actually grinding now. The elbow piece of it. I can hear a metal to metal grind as I move that thing. Either I need to oil it. I didn't think I need to do that, or something's come loose in there and it's a grinding sound. So when you go to move it, it's not silent anymore. You can move these things around pretty well without hearing anything. But I'm gonna have to take that thing apart and see what it is.
Zach in the chat room here says Knox gear has some that don't have external springs too. My only worry about Knox is the only thing I know from Knox was that knockoff they had of the ATR 2005, and then it went away. And I'm like, it wasn't bad. I just to me, Knox and Neewer are kind of I almost wonder if they're the same company and they just changed their name.
Could be. Well, they're a knockoff of everything, right? Everything they do is a knockoff of something. They do. They've got one with internal springs in it as well. For $50, same thing. But it has a really cheap base to it. It's a really small base. That's the one with the Neewers. It's not the best, with the Rode, or any of those, even the Heil one. You get a really solid base to it. And I think it's important to have that base piece.
Yeah.
Wow, we talked about boom arms, Dave. That for like 10 minutes. Wow.
Woohoo!
Speaking of 10.
Yeah, speaking of 10, we want to thank our $10 patrons, people like Frank Blackmiller, Jeffrey Hallish at Podnuts. That's PODNUTZ. It's a computer repair podcast. Josh Liston at onthebubble.com, Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com, Michael Delaney at babymountainradio.com. That's also the podcast Caregivers for Dementia. Nick Suberling, Subs, over at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com, Sean Park at BeYourOwnNerd.com, Barry Kessler at BarryKessler.com, Jay Cleveland Payne at MoreBetterMedia.com. He said, trying to find his mouse. There we go. And we'll talk about our $5 supporters shortly. So, Jim, you were saying you were playing with Grammarly this week.
Well, Grammarly's gotten really aggressive in their marketing over the last 2 weeks. It could be longer. I just noticed, but I've begun to now, whenever I'm in a web page and I am trying to correct something, fix something, let it run. By the way, sometimes their correction methods are just maddening. But they now have been doing really aggressive pop-ups trying to get you to onto their premium service.
Oh,
so Grammarly is in that phase right now. They've been the darlings of the internet. Everybody's like Grammarly. You gotta have Grammarly. You gotta use Grammarly. It's free. It's great. It's awesome. Free plan is good. Stay on it. They are definitely in that mode for their investors, where they're moving from free or freemium to premium. And the free plan is going to stay. At least it looks like it at this point. But it's a little maddening when you're trying to edit stuff and it literally just keeps popping up all the time. Like, hey, have you thought about premium? No, I mean, I thought about it a minute ago when you reminded me for the last 10 minutes. So it's been a little frustrating.
I forget whose website I was at and they were asking me about it. And they had a pop-up on the front window. And every page you went to, that pop-up, and I was like, dude, I'm ready to punch you in the face at this point, because every time, every page, and it's like almost every pop-up tool I've ever used has a way to say, show this X amount of times per session. And I was like, so whatever you're using, if it doesn't have that option, get rid of it. And then, because it was just,
it's just not necessary. Yeah. Like, stop. Like, okay, I get it. You want to sell me premium. I get it again. Oh, and a third time, I mean, just, it's just, it gets obnoxious. So, I know Grammarly doesn't listen, but it's a shame. And that's kind of the drawback to the freemium model behind what a lot of podcasters get sucked into, is they start with these freemium things, and because we all want to do stuff for cheap, but then these companies get, they start grinding on you. It just drives me crazy.
Well, and I've seen that with the Smodcast. Kevin smokes a lot of pot.
Maybe not what he wants to be known for.
I can't remember his name. Smodcast. It's he loves Batman. He was a keynote speaker at Podcast Movement. Maybe I got his name wrong. Anyway,
I'm bad at names too.
He used to literally he was like one of the first people to put like 4 minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
And I think if you sign up for some sort of premium thing, you would then.
Well, of course they want to get you in the premium, right? That's what they want to do. They want to be a nuisance. It's just too bad we have to do it that way.
But Michael has joined us. Mr. Delaney, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing just fine, Dave. How about yourself?
Not too bad. What can we help you with?
I just wanted to pop in real quick. You all were talking about the boom arms.
Yeah.
The one that you and I had talked about came with an XLR cable already ran through the.
Oh, that's nice.
So we ordered the next one too, but the boom arm itself already has the cable through the arm.
Nice.
So,
Michael, what's the name of that?
Do you remember which one we recommended?
No, I don't. I had it in the email, Dave.
You bought that one with the one with the XL cable in it,
right? We ordered it from B&H.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, it's nice to have that cable out of the way. The Rode arms have little Velcro clips that you can put around them, so you can kind of you can kind of route that cable any way you want. It's not the end of the world if you don't have it embedded in, but it looks really, really nice when that thing and it comes out of this I think it comes out underneath this piece right here, right on the cable.
Mine's like coming out of the top, sir.
Out of the top, out of this top piece. Okay.
Yeah. That'll work.
Yeah. No, it's nice to have that. That's a super nice feature to be able to hide those. I don't know how many. I mean, it's really a preference thing, right? Because you really don't see much for most of the time beyond this, right? And I wouldn't even see that. Most people wouldn't see it. It's kind of put away for me. But on the desk, it looks great. You don't have this cable. Your cable routing is taken care of for you.
Right.
And what's funny is if you then are not like the cheapy one I had, I don't know if I moved it around so much or what, or just the fact it was cheap. The microphone cable actually went kind of bad in it. Yeah. So I have, my cable looks like this. It's got let's see if I can get a good angle on this. Yeah. So here's the cable here. And then I've got a separate cable going into the actual microphone.
Yeah.
So
that is one of those things. If the cable goes bad, you're not getting that thing out.
Yeah. So that's it. Which is not the end of the world. But
so if the cable's in the arm itself, the arm doesn't come apart to replace the cable.
Well, you could take it apart, but you probably can't get it back together. That's, I mean, it's like taking your bicycle apart when you're a kid.
You end up buying a new arm just for the cable.
Or just use a different cable. That's what I did.
What Dave did, just route another cable.
I mean, I could, if I wanted to, I could just take a wire cutter and cut that cable off and then just
snip it, push it in.
And then what I'm doing right now is I got the old, I've got a bread wrapper, what we call, whatever you want to call this thing to wrap the cable. Yeah. Twisty to keep stuff out of the way. So that'll work. And that's all Samson has. It has a bunch of Velcro straps that are black. So you don't really,
I've got two questions for you guys, and then I'm going to back out and finish listening to the show.
All right.
Dave, I've got the same mic there that you've got there. How far in between your pop filter and the mic are you?
So
about a finger?
Hey. This is a family show.
About a finger. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have used a different one.
And then the other one.
And then I'm usually about 2 or 3 fingers away from that. And then
I've been playing the Call of Duty with this mic, and the guys aren't having any problem at all hearing me. And I'm a fist away from it.
Yeah.
So
hand is not bad. Depends on the mic, right? If you go 4 fingers, that's kind of what's Dave. You're probably 4 fingers away with the pop filter in between, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So that's good.
And then I typically point it at the corner of my mouth just to avoid talking. Not that talking directly into it is bad. It's just saying, if I say happy peanut butter, there's more chance of it. I'm really relying on this pop filter to do the best.
Yeah, Michael, you have good distance right there. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, see that? I mean, it's right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good technique, and that mic is treating you well on that. What are you running it into?
A Pro FX8 mixer.
Oh yeah, so you got a Mackie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one. I've got an 8 here. I have the V2 because I spilled wine on V1. So
that stinks.
No, it's great. The V2 is a great board.
Yeah. So it's like, oh darn, I got to buy new gear. Yeah.
Michael, have you've seen on that board has a USB pass through, so you can push a button and everything your computer plays will also be recorded through the Hangout or whatever you're using. Have you tried that?
I haven't tried that yet, sir. No, sir. I've seen that button that you're talking about, but I haven't tried that yet.
Right below the input level, if you just push that in, anything you play on your computer, you can hear. It's kind of like a mix minus for your computer in some ways. It'll play it right. Cool. It'll play it right. No, it's super cool. Like if you wanted to play a YouTube video, or you wanted to, like sometimes I want to share comments that people said at a keynote, and I can bring the video up, hit that button, it'll just play it through. And I don't have to do anything more than the USB cable to get that done. It's super. I know there's other ways to do it. People, you could send this cable on that route and route that. No, it's super easy. Push one button and you're done.
Cool.
Lynn is asking, does anyone use double pop filters? Yes. The one and only Emily Prokop does. She has one of these, and then she has on her ATR 2100, she has kind of like this setup, but she's got what I call the clown nose, the big foam thing on it. And she says that's she has whistling S's. I was listening to her on the Chris Currens, he said, Podcast Engineering School podcast, wearing his t-shirt. And because she has whistling S's, which sounds like a band, like in the 60s, like a folk group.
Would be a good one.
The whistling S's.
Horse with no name.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael, you had one more question?
Yeah, just one more question. Do you guys leave your mixers on all the time, or do you shut them off?
I shut mine off at night.
I leave mine on all the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, just a matter of choice.
Yeah, I think so. I've run mixers for years without ever turning them off and not having a problem, but maybe that's not good for them. I don't know.
The only thing I do, and I just realized I haven't done it in a long time, I would pull off 2 paper towels and stick it on top of it just to somewhat try to get dust from not going into.
Yeah, I bought a cover. A cover that I'm not using
right
on it. So Mackie makes a cover specifically for that.
Nice.
Board, Michael. So if you want to get a cover, you can. A dust cover. It's pretty cool. They're $30.
Come with something. I didn't know whether it was I didn't know exactly what it was, but it was a square thing.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm doing with it right now.
Might be the cover. Yeah. I bought one separately. The other thing I've gone to is moving my mixer. It's actually sitting on my desk like this, or tilted like this, not flat on the desk. One, that stops me from spilling things into it mostly. Okay, let's just fourth glass of wine, it's going in for sure, right? But two, it keeps the dust from going down into the into the sliders for that, and then three, it doesn't take up a ton of room on my desk. I'm not really, I'm not mixing Bohemian Rhapsody, right? I'm not sitting there, trying to do all these different mixes. Generally, it's a couple knobs, and I just need it close enough that I can make just volume adjustments. So getting it sitting up on my desk vertically has been, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I just got a non-skid little pad that it sits on, so it won't like slide, slide that way. It's worked great for me.
Well, mine's just sitting right here, right beside my desk here on a wire rack.
Yeah, you can do it that way. I just like it sitting up. It just keeps it, kind of keeps it out of trouble for me.
All right. How does it sound? I mean, the guys in the game is telling me it sounds great to them. How's it sound to you all?
Yeah, you're fine.
Sounds good.
You're fine. It could have a little more bass in it.
Okay.
Honestly, but that may pull the mic out and a little bit closer to you really quick, and then count to 3. No, get it closer to you, not farther away. Pull it closer, and then count to 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. See, that sounds okay. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. No, good stuff.
Thanks for
jumping in.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, you bet. That's how you do it. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you. Awesome.
That's exactly what we're looking for, by the way, with callers. Like exactly what he did it was awesome, Michael. Great job.
Yeah, I always tell people, they're like, well, so like, what is it? I go, it's free podcast consulting, basically, in a nutshell.
It's just fun though. Like it's super great. Speaking of fun, we got some.
Yeah, we have our $5 awesome supporters, which means you get bonus content. When you do the $10 thing, you get your link on our website. And of course, the $20 people get their name mentioned in every episode. So we're talking about awesome people like Corey Finneran at ivenv.com, who I actually did get to see at PodFest briefly.
Really? He's still hanging around. I miss Corey.
Yeah, he's his business is just booming. I love this because I can see it in front of, I don't have to look at PowerPoint. I can actually see the thing in front of me. Eric Hunley over at unstructured.podbean.com, Illiquity at travelglutenfree.me, Jason Curtis at cuatx.com, Jeremy Dennis at transmissionspodcast.com, some guy named Jim Collison at theaverageguy.tv. Yay! That's it. And Joe Salsihigh at stackingbenjamins.com, Joe Taylor down in Nashville and onfaithsedge.com, Kim Slusher at distractedlife.podcast.com, and our good old friend Michael Ray, as well as Master Cauldron at cauldronscrypt.com, Rob Griffiths at bedtime.fm, and if you add a /storytime or /peace out, you'll see his shows there. Troy Heinrichs at the blacklistexposed.com. Troy had this cool thing where he got to moderate a panel of like a big chunk of the whole staff, like all the actors and stuff at some event. I heard about that on the feed.
That's so great.
He's in the chat room. It's always fun to say it with me, Gaggle Pod, the one and only Kyle Bondo. And I also love to say Merchants of Dirt, which is his other show. Matthew at scottishpodcast.com. Chris Holyfield, who I will see in June at the Utah Podcast Summit. He's at iamsaltlake.com. Ed Ryan, we talked about him earlier, at Podcasting for Radio Dummies. Ross Brand at livestreamuniverse.com. And Ryan P. Jackson at myperfectpodcast.com, where I believe I'm episode 1. So, and we'll come back a little later and talk about our $1 subscribers. But thanks to everybody who is an awesome supporter. Go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. So,
Knox, I was doing a little while you were thanking our subscribers. I was doing a little bit of research on Knox. We're saying that they make knockoffs. They are such a variety company. They make gelatin. They make coolers that plug into your car that you can put your drinks in your car into it. And they make cordless nail and staple guns. I mean, what? That's some diversity in the company for sure. Let me tell you, it's like, wow, okay, and they make boom arms, and microphones.
Because when you think staple guns, you're like, what should we make next? I know, boom arms for microphone
and microphones. I don't think they're making that, Knox. They stopped making that microphone.
Yeah, that has not come back. I smell a lawsuit there somewhere.
Oh,
maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say. It makes you wonder. It's pretty popular, but
plus it was like $40. It was cheap.
So, but today, right? ATR 2100 or the Samsung Sun. Yes. Sun? Yeah.
Samsung is the other company.
Dude, Korean company that has a gajillion dollars. And so those two are really like the best entry level make. And they're kind of the same mic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. We have No Cupcake Zone is asking, hey, what's the phone number? We ditched the phone. It was kind of a pain in the butt. And yes, we could do it. If you just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join, you can hop right in just like Michael did a minute ago. And we would love to answer your questions. And I had one other thing. I had a question while we're waiting for Mr. Cupcake to join us, or Mrs. Cupcake. I have Mr. It is, he's been on before. I have a simple, easy to use podcast setup. This is from Catherine Shaw. I set up a WordPress site, and I'm using the Seriously Simple podcasting plugin as opposed to just, I guess, the Simple Podcast plugin. This one is Seriously Simple plugin. It works really well. My hosting fees are low. Now, she doesn't say who she's using as a host. I assume she was self-hosting when I copied this. I'm considering starting a second podcast about cooking, though, and I'm looking at other hosting options. Is there a reason to go with Blueberry or Libsyn instead of what I have set up already? The only thing I really lack with WordPress and the Seriously Simple plugin is a good way to track downloads accurately, and that would be my first thing. Number one, you get to track downloads accurately. And then the other one is that I don't do this a lot, but I love the fact that I can do it if I want to. If I want to send something just to my subscribers, I could without putting it on my website. I think that's kind of fun. The other thing is with using a web host as a media host, what do you think a typical web page is in size?
Oh, they're not very big.
Like maybe 20K. Maybe.
Well, no, probably a little more than that. I mean, you might be in the megs, in the single or low digit megs, depending on how you built it. I've talked about those graphics earlier.
That's true. What you got on those graphics,
you could have gigantic graphics on there.
Yeah. So if you get popular, and now instead of serving little baby mags, you're serving bigger mags, and when you get 300 people trying to grab that MP3 file, and it's not a bandwidth issue, it's not a storage issue, it's the fact that your server may have a hard time keeping up. Boy, everybody's jumping in here. So we'll get Mr. Cupcake on here, and Michael Ray is in the wings. So we'll
on Michael, hang tight. We'll get to you.
Yeah.
No Cupcake.
Yeah, you're man. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, man. It says that I couldn't do the video, but
that's all right. As long as we can hear you.
Anyways, man, I love you guys' show, man. And I just got contacted the other day by someone that wants me to produce a podcast for them.
Nice.
Okay.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks, man. I had a question because I've used Spreaker in the past, and they asked me their opinion on Anchor, and no Anchor.
Mainly because when you go into Anchor, I have a video. I'll put this in the show notes. If you go to School of Podcasting and type in Anchor FM, you'll see I have a big long article that goes into, and everybody thinks I hate Anchor because I work for Libsyn. And I'm like, no, if you go back to, before I worked for Libsyn, I had criteria of what I was looking for. And there's no business model. So, but, things like Podshow, Podango, wildvoice.com, mypodcast.com, audiometric.io, Opinion Podcasting, and the last one was Zcat, have all gone out of business. Now, I know they're owned by Spotify, but I'm pretty sure Spotify doesn't want things that don't make any money. And they basically, when you submit your show, when you log into Anchor, they have a big old button. It's like, click here and we will submit your podcast for you. And what they don't tell you is when they submit your show to Apple, there are other statistics you can get from Apple, We don't know how many downloads you have to get these stats, but most of my shows get it. And if they do that, then your show is under their Apple ID and you can't see that. So if you have somebody who really wants to go free, go Whooshka. And that's about, now it's not as easy.
Don't go free.
Don't go free. Yeah.
Don't in this case, you can pay as little as $10 in most cases.
No,
20 if you want to splurge.
I've done Spreaker.
Yeah.
And Spreaker to me works
they're great,
exceptionally well.
They are great.
The only limitation that I have is he's going to want it's going to be a sports podcast, and they're going to be wanting to also do live streams with like coaches all
Spreaker.
over.
Yeah, I mean Spreaker for sure.
Spreaker, you can stream live right there. Yeah. Boom, from your phone.
Right, but I wanted to do video. What's a good platform to take? Because I know with Spreaker, I can sync it up with what do you call it? Either Skype to take phone calls or Google phones. The only limitation with that is you can't have call waiting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What solution would you recommend for that?
This StreamYard. Really. Yeah, but here's the thing. When you're first starting out, I don't know. It just video adds a whole other ball of wax. And then I would not host the video on Spreaker. I would host the video on YouTube. If you want to send, because if you're going to have an audio podcast or a video podcast, I would not mix that. I would have two. I would have whatever the podcast is, audio version, or whatever the name of the podcast is, video version. Okay. But I would not mix audio and video in the same stream because I don't know that, people are going to. And the other thing is there are a lot of apps. What was I just reading about? That there are many apps now that don't do anything. I think Spotify does. I don't think Overcast does. But there are certain apps that don't in their world, which is wrong. Podcasting is only audio.
Okay. Now, with the StreamYard, does it work with Facebook? With Facebook Live also?
You can set it up to go to Facebook, yeah, and then you would just wherever you set it up, either YouTube or Facebook, you can set it up.
Well, how much are you paying for this, Dave? 20? 25?
25.
25 a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does a lot for 25 a month. I mean, you can go on YouTube, you can go straight into YouTube with whatever you want. Like you can set up your own OBS or any of those services to stream, or you can use their Hangouts infrastructure to do it for, basically to do it for free. You could do it that way.
I'm pretty well versed on the Hangouts. The Hangouts is fine. The only thing is that god awful. If somebody calls in that damn number, if you're using it that way, we've really been trying to get away. I mean, I don't know if you get it depends on your audience for sure, but I don't know if people are calling in anymore for the most part, right? I mean, I can't even get people to answer the call when I call them, much less them call me. Yeah. So I'm just not sure it's worth the time and the effort. Dave and I, over the last 5 years, have spent an enormous amount of time, and Dave has spent some money trying to figure out how to make this phone call thing work. And I think maybe, Dave, we've taken 2 phone calls in the whole time we maybe 3. It hasn't been very many, right?
Maybe 5, because I keep bringing it back. But the last time I brought it back, I remember the one time we had 2 calls in one show, and we were like, "Whoa, maybe this is going to work this time."
Maybe it's coming back,
and it just makes it's so easy here just to go. They make a link, and then I use pretty links to, askthepodcastcoach.com/join, and and I still have Mike is talking about call in studio if you want to take phone calls. And that's what I have. I still have probably $15 on account at Call-In Studio that I'm never going to use now.
Yeah.
So it's just, and Mike made a previous point. He goes, I wouldn't suggest that you become a producer of any podcast that requires free anything. That makes you like, wait, right. what kind of budget do they have? So
no, it's not. No, they were just, because they were looking to do a podcast and somebody recommended Anchor to them and they contacted me and said, hey, I want to do a podcast. And I'm getting paid for it, and it was like, hey, you know what do you think about Anchor? And I was like, I didn't really have an opinion on Anchor, and I wasn't make sure that I didn't want to dismiss something that was good.
Yeah, I put a link there in the chat room. I'll throw it in here again. If you go over there, I go bit by bit of like, here's the problem,
And they've just been bought, and so they have a new leadership team as well over there at Spotify. And you get zero lift from Anchor now. Is it, for what you're doing, if you're going to stream it live, Spreaker is way better at that and has a lot better tools to be able to get it done. And you just this is a case you probably want to pay for the pro and not Anchor can they do it? They absolutely can. I push a podcast out through Anchor and it works, right? It does work, but they're in a little bit of it's just there right now. I wouldn't. It's just it's a messy place right now over there.
Yeah. Just to start out, it's going to be like, maybe 2 people on the podcast. And I already have one of those mixers, and I'm kind of like wavering back and forth because I got a Yeti USB mic. And I don't know is there a kind of a mix? But you can't really put the USB mic to a mixer. No,
not unless you have the Yeti Pro. Has both. But I don't recommend. I don't recommend the Yeti or the Yeti Pro.
Okay. Because I was thinking maybe if there's like a hookup to where you can hook up multiple Yetis into one thing.
Not without software. You could use something like Audio Hijack.
Live.
Well, yeah, Spreaker. Yeah,
actually, the Spreaker software will do it.
Yeah,
it'll do multiple USB if you want to do it. That's not a great way. If you're going to do this long term, it's just you can. Don't get me wrong. Right. It's just you don't have as many options, and the sound isn't as good. I mean, minus the mic. Let's just say the mic. We take the mic out of the equation. Getting the sound returned to you through earbuds, where you can hear what you're actually sounding like. It's not a great experience through USB, and it's tough to get a whole mix if you have multiple ones. It's tough to get a whole mix. I'm a much bigger fan of running that through some kind of audio device, either one of those units that's made for it, an audio. What do they call it? Audio, Dave. The Scarlett. What do we call it? Audio interface.
Interface.
There we go. Or just a mixer. We were talking with Michael earlier about he's got a Mackie mixer. They're $250. I mean, it's not terribly expensive.
Right.
And then you can run everything in. See, once you go mixer, then I want to go XLR for everything. And because you get way more options that way than you would. You can do some mix. You can add in EQ. You just get a lot more options with XLR on these than you would on, and you can still run these, either this or the Knox mic or well, you can't buy Knox, the Samsung or those mics do have XLR inputs. So if you're going to go that way with multiple mics, it's probably time to step it up away from USB and move to a mixer and a headphone amplifier. Spend a little bit more money, but you get a lot more options.
Well, yeah, I have a mixer. It's only like a 4-channel mixer.
Is it USB?
No. Well, yeah, it's a USB. It's
like good.
It has the interface built into it. Yeah. But I was thinking maybe I should get like up to 4. What do you call it?
Well, it depends on how many people you're going to have on your show. If you're going to have 4 people in the room, then you need 4 XLRs. However many people you have, you need an XLR input. But we're running out of time, so I want to get Michael in here. Hang around in the Cupcake. Hang around. We can answer more questions in the post show. But I wanted to get Michael in here before we tune out. So, Michael, what's going on, my friend?
Mr. Ray. I like it. He's got the Home Gadget Geeks t-shirt on. I don't think we hear you through your mic.
My letters are starting to wear out.
Yeah, so that's okay. It means you're.
I had yeah, that's right, and it fits still too, even after the winter. But I was wanting to talk about Apple Mail, and because I have Apple computer, and every time I turn around, all of a sudden passwords are just gone. I got to redo them all the time. Is that a problem with Apple Mail, or is it just?
That may be a question outside of our scope of influence.
I think you've stopped the band. It's sorry, we
okay.
Nobody's won.
Oh, I got plenty more questions. It's been a while, so
well, hey, we're coming up on the end of this segment. I'm going to do a pro radio movement here. So since Dave just came back, we're coming up to the end of the segment because we need to keep this to an hour. Hang on, hang tight. We'll bring you in. We'll get No Cupcake back in here as well and do some post show.
Yeah. So
how's that sound? So Michael, hang tight.
Yeah, Jim, what is coming up on the AverageGuy.tv?
Well, we spent some time. Funny, he mentions Apple Mail. We spent some time talking about the new Apple credit card and all the stuff it brings for you. Some new technology when we think about on the iPhone, and then that went into budget apps that are available for you now. What are you using to budget your money? Maybe using your smartphone as opposed to, nothing. And so that's the most recent episode. I'm still getting ready to post it, so not there yet, but at the AverageGuy.tv.
And this week on the School of Podcasting, because I was in Vegas, I'm going to take an article that I had at the Podcast Business Journal and turn it into an episode, because Sunday, I was all set to do this on Sunday, and I am singing in my church on Sunday. So I will be, I was like, hey, I am going to take pre-content that I already had and move it on over to an episode. And I'll be doing, I actually have an update on the Rodecaster. I actually talked to the lead sales guy from Rode and found out some interesting things about the Rodecaster that I'm like, that's why you can't do that. So there's some interesting things, and I let him know some of the problems I've been having with it, and I need to fix those. But at any rate, that is coming up on the School of Podcasting. I was going to do something fun because it's episode number 666, and I was going to have like the 4 horsemen of podcasting, and I was like, no, we're just gonna like overlook the fact that it's episode number 666. So that is coming up. And so Michael, stick around. Mr. Cupcake, stick around. Everybody else, stick around. We got some post show coming up, and I still have I have 18 seconds to kill. Thanks to the chat room. Thanks to Mike and Kyle and Lynn and everybody else. Another 21 seconds. I'm doing horrible.
Wait a minute. Is it going backwards or forwards?
It's going backwards. Here we go. We're done. We're finally done. Now I can say thank you. Stick around. Yeah, I'm too tired to do a talk up, and I didn't leave 5 seconds of empty space.
Let's do it now.
Yay. All right. So, Michael, you said you had other questions?
Yeah. One other one. I have a website. Okay. It ain't really, I can't even figure out how I really kind of did what I did, but it's Michael L. Ray was the only way I can get to the .com. And the 2 L's in there kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, there's nothing you can do about that.
I guess,
Yeah, it is. No, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't, because DNS does not allow or doesn't use capitalization, so you can't separate it. Now, when you write it out, when you are displaying it someplace, you could put Michael, capital L, capital R, right? You could do it that way. Or in an embedded hyperlink, you can do anything you want. So it doesn't necessarily matter that it's Michael L. Ray and it all blends together. When you display it, you can change the display hyperlink to anything that you want. So that's probably your solution.
Yeah, Laverne and Shirley did real well with the big L's. So, I mean, if they did it,
Yeah, well, I do the AverageGuy.tv, and I put A and G capitalized in anything I'm displaying. It doesn't show up that way on the web, but it does help separate, seeing it's the average guy. So using capital letters does help separate that when you're jamming words all together. But it's not going to show up on the web that way, if that makes sense.
Okay. And passwords. I know that, Jim, you've used that one for a long time, and I've tried other ones.
Yep.
And I just, for some reason, I just can't seem to get it to work. It's just me. I'm sure it's not the program, So any others that are halfway decent, that are safe or whatever, that
well,
I get it where Apple will actually do that for you, but then if you have an Android phone or something, or you can't, it's just.
I don't think the apps will automatically add it for you. When I'm on my phone, I can pull up LastPass and say, please show me the password, and then copy it and paste it. I don't think it does the autofill like it does on your computer.
Okay.
Yeah, Michael, I would really get that figured out, because you're going to struggle. Okay. If you're struggling with LastPass, you're going to struggle with any of the other ones.
Yeah.
And so I would get
LastPass.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, one password is another one. There's a RoboText or Robo. I should know the name of this, but I don't. There's a variety of them, and they're all great. Like, they all work super well. LastPass is probably the best integrated in with everything that you're doing. That's why I like it. So, but you're going to have to, if you're having problems with it, you figure out what those are and then overcome it. Because it's a great piece of software. It works out really, really well. I get super frustrated when I can't use it.
I've been doing some spring cleaning. I've been getting rid of crap I never even knew I had for passwords and programs in there. Man, it's amazing.
That's where LastPass is great with their audit, with their security audit. So it'll go through and say you have this number of accounts with the same password, right? Which is not right. Yeah. By the way, RoboForm, Mike. Thank you, Mike. It's RoboForm. That's another one that's out there as well. By the way, with LastPass now, both Android and iPhone, they just recently, the iPhone piece is just coming on new, where you can have it fill. For the longest time, that was blocked. And now you can have it autofill. And it's not autofill on mobile, right? You got to go to the site. It'll say a little password thing below. You hit it. It'll take you into the app. You'll authenticate in the app. It'll bring it back across and fill it. So not as convenient as on a PC, but it's still way better than trying to remember hashtag AX174A, so.
And you guys was talking about boards. I think when you do that mix minus thing, when I used to do it, that USB part was super easy to do a mix minus with USB.
Yeah.
Now, if Jim gets drinking too much of that MD 2020 and ruins another board, I think maybe he should go.
I just need a splash guard on the whole. Like I just need a piece of plastic over everything on my desk. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Eric had asked, what would you rather have, since we're talking back to mixers here? What would you rather have, a MixPre 3 or a Rodecaster Pro?
That's for you, Dave. You've had both.
And I would say it depends on who you're interviewing. If you're interviewing people who go, Skype, what's a Skype? Zoom, what? Rodecaster Pro, because now I can tie my phone into it.
Yep.
If you're going places like I want to record in the bar and there's no computer there, the
MixPre is great on the road, Dave. It's a great road device. That's true.
And because the only thing that this has over that is I can do that. I can play jingles. If you don't need jingles, you're just going to record it live, then no, don't. MixPre 3 is hard to beat. And so if you don't need the jingles and the fact that it has a built-in, because you can buy a headphone amp for like, if you go
$30, $30.
If you go H6 and either a splitter, why can't I there we go. Left is right, right is left. You do H6, that's $350, I think, and a headphone amp, there's another $50. You're looking at $400 versus $600, and the only ability is you can't do that. So you can always do that later. So
there you go, Michael. What else?
One more question. I know you guys are now using StreamYard. So if you're going to interview people or whatever, like I'm doing some, I sent Dave a link a while back about an article. I'm still working on an article with a school. I'm doing some schooling stuff. And so I know Zoom, you can talk to people back and forth, and you can record that as well. And it seems like it's decent quality. Anything else would kind of work in its place?
I have found out that Zoom only records at like 22.1, the sample rate is low. Because Steve Stewart, his head explodes if you say record with Zoom. And I'm like, why? And he goes, it's the sample rate. I use Squadcast. I love it. It's a little more geeky because you end up with 2 files instead of 1 that you then have to combine. But if I were talking now and the internet hiccuped and all of a sudden because it's recording locally, you don't get that. You hear that on your end, but my recording actually has the full thing. So
because I think there was another program a long time ago that did that too, and people was having a hard time syncing it. But
that's Zencastr. Zencastr's been having problems. Squadcast is actually applying for a patent because they have anti-shift technology. And I met those guys. They were at NAB. Those guys are, and they're actually working on. They have a couple things they're working on. One is going to be, what if I have somebody who goes, what do you mean I have to use Chrome? What's a Chrome? That they're going to actually, in the future, I don't know when, but they're going to have the ability to call in. So if you have somebody who's like, and they can't do it, they'll just.
We have very few of those anymore, though. I mean, and on the Gallup side, we interview your podcasters. So I'm finding less and less of that resistance, Dave. Hangouts do it. Michael, I make a living off of recording Hangouts. So it simple,
doesn't
easy,
sound too bad at all.
Cross-platform, works on just about everything. And now that Edge, in the future, Microsoft Edge will be Chrome-based. So you're not. So if they're on a Windows PC and it automatically opens Edge, which it will, it's Chrome-based. So you don't have to do the plugin anymore. It's just like it being on Chrome. So I kind of like that as an option. So.
And Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got.
All right, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for.
I've been out in Wyoming in the desert, and I was talking to Dave one time from a Mexican restaurant, and as soon as you left town, I'm not kidding, 10 minutes you couldn't even get in there, and it was just all out in the desert.
Yeah, there you go. It's an album name, by the way.
Money, though, that's right.
Talking to Dave from a Mexican restaurant. That's the name of my next album.
Yeah. I was telling him we were just talking, and I said, "Yeah," and we're sitting there. But when you was mentioned, I think your New Year's Day show or something, Jim says, "Michael Ray, come back."
Yeah, we hadn't seen you in a while.
I was actually there, and I was on a phone. I couldn't do anything. I'm like, damn phone.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Way to represent Home Gadget Geeks and the Omaha. He's a local Omaha guy. So
yeah,
appreciate that.
Eric
did
is
we
asking.
Lose Cupcake?
No, I'm bringing him on right after this. If the budget isn't a problem, which would I get? Here's the thing about the Rodecaster. It depends on how geeky you are. In fact, this is going to be a rerun in the future. I'll tell you now. There's no way, and this designed this way, there's no way to record bad audio with the Rodecaster. Now, what I mean by this is normally I record somewhere between -6 to -12. When I record stuff right now, even though it's going way into the yellow, it's going to go peak at about -6. So it records a little lower than I normally do. Now, does it still sound good? Yes. Can I fix that? Sure. But and I asked him, I said, I went in and turned the gain on my mic all the way up. I put the slider all the way up. There is no master fader. I go, is there some sort of built-in compressor to this thing? And he said, uh-huh. And I go, because you can't peak this thing. And he goes, uh-huh. He goes, it's designed to record good audio. And I went, okay, so if you're super geeky and you want ultimate control, MixPre, and I kind of like the other thing to keep in mind. Let me pull this out. And this is one of the things I don't like about the Rodecaster. Let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, I'll put that here. See if I can do this. Oh, I knew I was going to do that. All right, I'll put this here. All right, let me move my microphone. The MixPre 3 is here. It takes up about 1/4 of the space of the whole thing here.
Go back. Go back to your right or left, where your hand is. There you go. Good. Perfect.
Yeah. So you can see. For me, I missed my desk. It takes up a big old chunk.
It's still not very big, though.
No, it's not gigantic.
Honest, right? It's not very big.
No, and it does. And the nice thing about it, almost no cables, right? You got 4 cables going to the back, 2 cables going to my headphones. I'm good to go. So it's one of those where neither one's a bad choice. It just depends on how. And like right now, the whole recording into software, separate channels, kinda. Not really. And I talked to him about that. And I said, look, when I go into Hindenburg and I want to adjust the volume of one channel, I said, Hindenburg drags all my faders at the same time. He goes, yeah, it's a Hindenburg problem, which was kind of the thing when I said, I can't get this to connect all channels into Adobe Audition on a PC. And they went, that's an Adobe problem. So I'm kind of like, and this is where I that guy right there said the smartest thing about this. This is version 1 of this product. So there's, not that is a bug, but they're coming out, and he didn't say when, but they are coming out with a version that's going to have separate tracks to the SD card. So,
oh, good. Will that be different hardware, or will they just do a firmware update?
I guess a firmware again. Okay. And I will say their updates have been a piece of cake. And I told him, I said, right now I can't connect via Bluetooth. And the guy said, oh, I need to go in, when I go into Bluetooth, tell my phone to forget this device, and then it should find it again.
And then rub your tummy and tap on your head and, say Beetlejuice 3 times.
Because I said I have an iPhone, I think 6. I mean, it's old, but it's not ancient. And my iPad is probably 2 or 3 generations ago. So again, not completely ancient, but I'm like, Bluetooth is Bluetooth. It should connect. Mm-hmm. It's not like there's a new version.
No, see this. Okay. So Bluetooth is not Bluetooth. That's the problem. Yeah. You can't. Not all Bluetooth standards are the same. Not all Bluetooth radios are the same. And so you might, if you have a really crappy Bluetooth radio inside your device, it could have more latency than if you have a really good one. So you have to be careful with Bluetooth. Like it's not, that's one of the things we kind of think, well, it's USB. Well, sort of. Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's speed. So, all right, we're bringing No Cupcake back.
Yeah, I looked down. I'm like, oh crap, we got 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I need to get him in here. So, welcome back to the show, Mr. Cupcake.
Yeah, I won't be fast. I mean, I'll be fast because you answered pretty much all the questions that I was looking for, because I was going to ask you some questions about the Rodecaster Pro, as far as will it make my production life easier? I'm sure it will be, but I already have some equipment. I don't know if it's worth investing in that would it make it that much easier?
No,
just different problems. Like you can now, there's some things you can do easier that before were a little bit of work, but now it introduces so you start saying, oh, now could I do multi-track? Well, that's kind of a whole different problem. And could it? Yes, it could make life easier for you as far as having a bunch of different things. It's a smaller footprint than a big mixer. It covers a couple things that you wouldn't need to have. So yeah, it could make some things easier for you.
Right.
It'll add more complications to it as well.
That's true. It's one of those things too that, like right now, if I'm going to blow everybody's ears out, but if I turn up my volume a little louder than usual and accidentally hit this, I'm like, I got to be quick on that knob to bring it down. So, and that's one where you're like, well, how do I fix that in post? Well, you can. I could go back and either, for that half a second, bring it down. And I'm like, look, if I'm adding a bunch of things in post, then why do I need a jingle palette? So it's and I kind of feel like this particular unit is a unit that can't decide what it wants to be when it grows up. It came out designed to be non-technical. Plug your microphones in and press the giant record button, and it's just going to sound great. And it's got all these things that you can do, and then everybody's like, well, where's the multi-track? And they're adding all this stuff later. And I'm like, but that's adding, I like the fact, it adds
complexity. We podcasters have ruined this thing because it was meant to be simple, and then we wanted to do complicated things. I think if you use it the way it was intended to be used and you keep it simple, it could be simple.
Yeah, Mike is saying it's not going to make life easier.
It could. It depends on your your production setup and what you expect out of it and how you're going to use it. It was designed to make life easier. We've made it more complicated.
Okay, my last question is, I know podcasting has, ever evolved. I mean, is it still on the trajectory that it was, like, say, 5 years ago? Because I remember podcast was supposed to be, like, almost a replacement for terrestrial radio. And that's why people like Howard Stern that were, going after podcasting a lot. And then you started to get all these big stars like Joe Rogan and, all these celebrities and stuff like that. But I seen that it's kind of cooled down. I just, for your opinion, is it still on that upward trend, or has it kind of plateaued? Because I see that YouTube is like YouTube streaming is taking a big chunk of it. What is your opinion?
I'm trying to get to the I'm at Edison Research. It's gone up every single year. And
I think this year was the biggest increase it's been in a while. So it's definitely moving, and it's moving faster, not slower. So I think we have.
Why does it seem like there's like, say, more money in you? I mean, I'm just thinking from a monetary standpoint. It seems like there's more money in YouTube, like streaming and super chats, than the actual podcast.
Well, YouTube is a unified platform that has 4 billion users. Okay. That's why. Yeah, okay. That's why. I mean, it because it's a single platform. Now, because it's a single platform, when YouTube decides they're done with you, you're done with them. I mean, it is no questions asked. You are out. And we're in podcasting.
When they get rid of your channel.
Yeah, if they ban you, you are banned. Like you're done. And there's no. There's not a lot of things you can do. When they decide to cut monetization to you, they cut monetization, and you're not getting it back. And it's a major thing, right? And the appeal process is difficult, and right. So, in great power, there is also great power to harm the users on the other end. So, that's why the money is in YouTube. But in podcasting, the share of ear, and Dave, what are you showing right here?
Yeah, this is the Infinite Dial, and you can see where we jumped 5% from 17% to 22% of people that are listening on a weekly basis. So it's just, and this
I think that's 51% on a monthly basis now. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Let me go back here. Let Let's see, monthly podcast listening. Yeah, monthly. So we're up to 32% are listening on a monthly basis. Where's the next one? Yeah, it's 22% are listening on a weekly basis. And this one, so 17 million more people in the US are aware of podcasting in 2018 than they were in 2019 versus 2019. When then 14 million more people are listening to podcasts in 2019 that weren't in 2018.
There's a 51% number. Was that like who knows what a podcast is?
Have listened to a podcast. So yeah, this one.
There it is.
So 70% are now familiar with the word. They've heard it. 51% have listened to a podcast at least one. Yeah, and so we're now we're also now more people listen to podcasts, and this is growing because this is not new in cars. So they listen to more podcasts than they do satellite radio. Not more than radio. Right. I don't think podcasting is going to replace radio, at least not anytime soon. But that we've already overtaken satellite radio in the car.
Yeah, there's like a lot of. I mean, I think those numbers do make sense because you have a lot of people like from Spotify, because Spotify has jumped in the game. iHeart has jumped in the game.
Yeah,
and a lot of their because what I've seen is a lot of former music artists are doing podcasts now. And
everybody's doing a podcast. I mean, literally, if you have any celebrity and you're not doing a podcast, you're an idiot. I mean, to me, I have a presentation that I have. It says not having a podcast in 2019 is like not having a fax machine in 1989. I'm like, it's just, come on, jump on board. Yeah. If you want to communicate with people, you got to have one. So, but I didn't realize like Pete Holmes had a show on HBO. He's been doing a podcast for years. You know, every time I turn around, some celebrity, I'm like, oh yeah, they have a podcast. I'm like, of course they do.
Yeah.
So
even the guys that even have radio, like Stephen A. Smith.
Oh yeah,
and like
Dave Ramsey,
and their podcast is probably more popular than their actual ESPN shows.
Yeah.
And then Mike says something here that keep in mind. A lot of quote famous podcasters already had oodles of a few money. Only Dave Jackson. That was fun. But yeah, there are a lot. I mean, people go. In fact, this will eventually be a School of Podcasting episode, and I'm just going to pick apart Joe Rogan because people want to be Joe Rogan. And I'm like, okay, step one, go do stand-up for 4 or 5 years, then be on Fear Factor, and then get involved with, WFC or whatever it is, and then do this, and then do that, and then you'll be Joe Rogan. And then start a podcast and become famous overnight. I'm like, even that didn't, happen.
What's interesting is Joe Rogan's podcasts are long. Like he's breaking all the rules. And yet he's getting, people are like, oh, it's got to be 20 minutes. It's got to be, and Rogan gets really personal on there, and they have side, they do rabbit trails, they do right. I mean, he breaks all the rules, and yet he's popular. So when people say, "Oh, you got to follow this format," I say BS. No way.
He's like the millennial Howard Stern.
Probably, yeah.
That's who basically he is. He's like the Howard Stern of the millennials.
I don't think he's a shock jock though, right? I mean, Howard Stern.
No, he's even Howard Stern's not Howard Stern anymore. He kind of
Howard Stern wasn't Howard Stern. He was playing a part, right? We all know that, right? Howard Stern, when he was crazy and doing all this stuff, that was an act. Right. Much like Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen. Gordon Ramsay's actually a super nice guy. The Gordon Ramsay we see on Hell's Kitchen is a complete act, and so we have to remember when Howard Stern was doing that was shock jock, that was intentional, that was a character he was playing.
Yeah, but I was reading up because I was going to sign back up because I haven't listened to Howard in a while, and I was going to sign back up, and I was kind of on his website and was reading some articles. He's actually gone back to people that he totally just attacked in the past and apologized, and I was like, that is a new kind of Howard Stern. But Joe Rogan, what Joe Rogan is, he is the anti Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel interview. There it's like it's 7 minutes. Hey, what'd you do on vacation? Great. Awesome. Oh, your kids are funny. Okay, roll the clip. And then they're out. And so he did an interview with David Lee Roth, which is always fun. He is the king of ADD. Like he's the poster child. Like you don't know what he's talking about. And apparently David Lee Roth is making some sort of Sunscreen or something like that now. He's got his own products going. But it was like, I don't know, almost 2 hours, which it did. One of my favorite new phrases now, courtesy of David Lee Roth, recreational outrage. He goes, yeah, the new thing now, man, is recreational outrage. And I was like, he's got a good point. So, but yeah, Rogan is the guest whisperer. Yeah, I like that line. He's
Joe Rogan. That's who he is. He's not anybody. He's him. Yeah. That's just what's great about him. He doesn't have to be somebody else. He is him. He's found his niche, and he's just crushing it.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. Go watch Joe Rogan, because when you watch Joe Rogan interview, this is what you see. He's on his elbows and he's listening. He's just like,
yeah.
And he's like, really?
You know what's really? Fun? I'm glad you mentioned that David Lee Roth episode, because I saw a couple clips on there, and the reason I want to bring that up is podcasting is kind of like the jazz. They were talking about what's the different, like, understanding jazz. You know how like jazz and other genres of music are much different, and people can't understand why people like jazz so much. And podcast to me is kind of like the jazz of communication, of broadcasting.
It can be. You don't want to get too, because there's jazz. Like, this is jazz, right? Mm-hmm. You got a melody, and then there's the jazz where, like, you have 4 separate musicians in 4 separate rooms, and somebody just says go. Right. And they're not, it doesn't sound like they're in the same key. They're just making noise. I don't want to listen to me, I need a podcast that somehow has a little bit of focus as to why the person is here and what they're going to talk about.
But there's different elements of podcasts. Like someone that does a podcast, it's not just the same melody. It's different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and the thing with Rogan is it is kind of jazzy, because he'll talk to David Lee Roth about Van Halen, and then he'll talk about sunscreen, and then he'll talk about David Lee Roth going in the Amazon, or he did weird canoe trips in the Hudson River in New York. It's like there's all sorts of places to go, and when you can do a podcast for as long as you want, again, it goes back to nothing is too long, only too boring. And when you got David Lee Roth, that man has stories that can go on for days. So
I'm going to go on a limb though and say, I think interviewing famous people is lazy. Like, it's super easy to get listeners, because everybody wants to hear that. Like, find people who aren't famous, who are doing really interesting things. That is hard podcasting. Like, I think that's way harder than David Lee Roth. Like, that's just a circus. Like, that is angry clowns coming out of a Volkswagen. That's super easy, right?
Well, I mean, and for me, I didn't even realize Bangs has been waiting in the green room.
Bring him in.
For me, I always say it's not the size of the guest that makes the guests. It's the size, it's the value
they bring, right? Yeah. It's really, as podcasters, we have the ability to highlight people who are doing interesting things that are not famous. And I think that's way harder to do and way more interesting than a David Lee Roth. And listen, I grew up on David Lee Roth, love the guy, but he's not interesting. It's not interesting anymore. So it's great that Joe Rogan can interview him for 3 hours, but the guy hasn't done anything interesting in a while. Like, how about some folks? I just saw this TED Talk the other day with this gal who is on the cutting edge science between trying to find and photograph black holes. That's interesting. Like, how about some SpaceX people that we never hear about, not beyond Elon, who are actually rocket scientists that are involved in these rocket launches? Like, how about something a little more interesting at times than just, I was on drugs for the first 35 years of my career.
Right.
I can't remember most of it. Like, come on, that's lazy. So,
but I always loved that saying. I forget what the original saying was, but I swiped it, and that is, it's not the size of the guest that makes the value; it's the size of the value that makes the guest.
Right.
So, yeah. But
you brought Bangs in here. Bangs, you're back.
Did. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for the info, man.
You bet.
You're welcome.
You bet. Thanks for jumping in. Take care.
Hi, peeps. Two things real quick. Yeah. First of all, last week, Apple released 10.14.4 on Mac OS. That's the source of Michael's password problem, probably with a Google account.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's the source of the problem. They'll fix it eventually when they get around to it.
Hopefully he's listening.
Have you guys seen the Zoom F6?
No, I saw the L12 at the show.
No, the show they had last week. What was it?
Zoom F6?
The Zoom F6, not released yet. They're going to announce pricing next month. They're going to release the units in June. There is no gain. There is no gain.
I repeat, no gain. We have found no gain.
You do not set gain.
Which is different than Rogaine, by the way.
You record, you normalize. There's your audio.
Looks like a pre.
It's using the Zoom F8N time code and preamps, but it has dual 32-bit analog to digital converters, and it records in a 32-bit float file. So if you've got one person whispering into their mic and one person screaming into their mic, you normalize the audio, you're ready to go.
Cool.
The
it's $1,000.
Who knows how much it's going to cost at this point? It's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But that will trickle down to us at some point.
Right. 6 inputs, 1 line output, TC generator, Sony L battery shed. You're talking about, they're talking all day battery on this thing too.
With L batteries, yeah.
Right.
Sony.
Yeah.
And I think it has USB-C for battery as well.
Yeah, there's
cool.
There's what it looks like.
That's a good looking box. I wish it was black and not silver, but that's a good looking box.
It's probably meant for video people doing semi-pro, low-end professional video commercials and whatnot. But no gain. The knobs on the front are faders to control the stereo mix. It records what it records. You normalize and go from there. No gain.
Interesting.
Cool. That looks good.
No one has a production model in their hands yet.
Yeah.
So that's marketing.
Yeah. It could be fake. Could be fake news. No, I'm just kidding. It'll probably come out, but cool. Good stuff, Banks. Nice job.
Wanted to make you happier this week instead of last week.
Or was it last
2
week?
weeks
2 weeks ago. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. That was we went a little off the rails after you were on.
Well, and I've had multiple people, and I almost hate to open this can of worms. I've had multiple people say, don't worry about it. They're just going over to the big people. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, no. In there, it leaves the door open that if they want to go after the little people, they can. I'm like, and that's the part. I understand they're going to go after blah, blah. I'm like, but you can go after the little people if you want. And that's when I went, that's a problem. So
don't open the can of worms. We talked about that. If you don't know what we're talking about, go to the post show.
I have an entirely different can of worms that I will not open for you at the moment.
Yeah. All right. Save it for next week.
All right. You guys
thanks for jumping in, man. Good seeing you. All right.
And then I did want to address this.
That's a sweet looking box.
That is sweet.
It's the first time I've seen it. That's a sweet looking box.
Introduce a bridge too far. Says, how about podcasters interviewing podcasters? Are people doing that? I've never
never heard of that.
That's a great idea.
Never heard of that.
Go to podcastaboutpodcasting.com. And that list is growing. I just found 2 more podcasts about I won't give his this guy was fun because my best thing ever. Because he comes up and he's got 30 years in radio and he's going to start teaching people how to podcast. And we're all like, oh, okay, cool. And my favorite question, Rob goes, oh, great.
Which Rob? Which Rob?
Rob Walsh. Sorry.
Walsh, okay.
And he goes, who do you host through? And my favorite answer for the podcast consultant that's going to teach you how to podcast. Oh, I don't do a podcast. And I was like, because he's in radio. And I was like, I did meet some really cool radio people, but there on occasion I do run into the I'm from radio. I got this kind of thing. And I'm like,
hey, it's Fred behind the
there you go.
The bridge too far. Fred, good to see you.
Yeah. I got to see Fred. I'm actually on his show, the Podcast Reporter.
Nice.
So
good.
Yeah.
Good. I hope things are well, Fred.
Is that an actual Kyle? Is that an actual thing? Podrect? I like that.
What makes us think we can just take pod and put it on anything and call it good? Yeah. I don't know. It's working so far. Pod fade, pod this, pod that.
Podrect. There we go. And now it's actually that's a website.
Is it?
What? And of course, where's the about page? Kyle, come on. Oh, there's at the very bottom. Podrect is about exploring the ebb and flow of the podcast industry. Join your host, Tim Bryan, and Kyle Bondo as they navigate the uncharted dangers of podcast news. And so it's a podcast news thing. So Kyle's doing.
Kyle's on this. He's in the chat room too.
Kyle's got the what you call it? He's got the bug because he's got what's the other one? He's got Pod Fader. He's got a show called Pod Fader.
Kyle,
Pod Wrecked.
What I was talking about earlier in the show, you guys are doing a little bit on Pod Wrecked, which I'm not calling you out or anything on this. This is just my opinion, by the way.
Oh, boy.
The fact that you have every single way to connect to you. So there's listen on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Android, Patreon, Squadcast, and then and they're all styled in their own colors and graphics and stuff. And I know they want you to do that and all those other kinds of things, but man, that is just to me, that is just eye vomit when I look at it. It's like, oh yeah, there's so many colors and different brands on there. One of the things I appreciated about Daniel's plugin,
social subscribe and follow.
Thank you very much. Was that it unified all those on a site, so it would keep the essence of the service and yet create a consistent brand color across the site. And so it is, I get to a site, I get to some, again, this is my preference, but I get to some sites like this and I get so overwhelmed with all the various options that are available. And if they're not styled correctly, I get exhausted before I even click on anything. I'm just like, okay, I'm out. I don't, where do I go? What am I doing? So I do think it is important. I think, personal opinion, I think it's important we take some of those styles away from those companies and move them more into our own style, our own brand, our own look. And again, that's why I like Daniel's plugin.
Well, and that's what I just need to remove about 50 of these extra buttons. It's like,
even that is
overkill.
That might be, and you can do it. And those are great looking, but what really I've gotten down, or I have a page that has everything. And then on my front page, I have my top 5.
Yeah, I'm going to say I want to have it towards Apple, Google, and then maybe Spotify, and then I don't know, make another thing. It's
maybe
like
Stitcher and iHeartRadio, right? Those are probably the two. I mean, those are probably. I guess look at your numbers, right? Go back and see where are you attracting birds of a feather? So where are you attracting people to? So that's my one advice. Again, it's my opinion. Don't take it for what it's worth. If it's working for you, but. You could pull some Google Analytics off that page and actually see where people are clicking on.
Yeah.
To say, because you have those big bright pictures, and then you're mixing everything else in there. So take it for what it's worth.
There you go. I'll have to check it. Now he's giving me something else to listen to.
No, it's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. I love
Podrec-isms. What's a Podrec-ism? It's Podrec. Okay, so explain that. What is a podcast-ism? Are constantly creating Podrec-isms, which are quotes that would be great on a T-shirt. There you go. Oh. And you need to hook up with
Emily.
Teespring. Is that the guy James from Teespring now works for a company that does. That's the big thing, by the way. I don't want to open up another topic, so we'll go till like 2:00. But the whole filming in 360, that was a lot of that, and 8 and 11K. I was watching like an 80-inch 8K TV that was just like. You felt like you could just climb in the TV. It was so, and it's going to be weird because eventually we're going to go, ooh, this is 4K. It's so grainy.
No, listen, our eyes, we are now to a point where our eyes cannot differentiate those pixels anymore. It's just, we're not,
right.
This stuff doesn't work at that resolution anymore. So to go 4:8, we're only getting bigger. And so I don't know. But that being said, if you were buying a TV, today is the day to buy it. And I don't mean today. I just mean right now. TV prices have gotten so ridiculous.
Oh, it's insane.
Oh my God. For what you can get. It's just a super, like, you may even want to consider taking a TV and making it one of your monitors, one of your podcasting monitors. Like I did this at work. I took a big 45-inch screen. It's my main monitor at work. And I put the camera right in front of it. So the camera comes up off a Manfrotto cable clamp, and it sits right in the middle of the screen and it disappears. The camera disappears in the middle of my screen. And that's super great to be able to not, because sometimes I do this all the time. I catch myself looking at myself down in the corner when I'm doing Google Hangouts. It's actually on this side down here. But it's a nice, and today $300 gets you a ton of TV.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. It is crazy. So there you go. There was one more pod word that I've just heard recently, and I'm just racking my brain trying. Like it was a new, not like pod fade, but something close to it, and it was on one of the podcasts. Can you think of a new podcasting term, Dave, that you've heard recently? That was because it would have been on one of your shows, maybe.
I know Steven and SP love to have pod back. That's one where I'm like, really? We're gonna throw okay. And I can't think any other ones, but it just seems, yeah. I did run out of cards at NAB. I'm down to the no beard Dave cards. So I've got to order some new ones.
I have a bunch. I use Vistaprint. Do you use them to?
I do. Cards? I just need to update it because now I get to put Hall of Fame podcaster on my.
Here's my card, and it's you can see designed by me, not very good looking, and I had the wrong phone number on it, and then I have 2 podcasts on the back that have pod faded.
That's it.
I do have I have homeservershow.com. It's gone. I have askthepodcastcoach.com. That's on there. And that's still going. But the other one's surfacegeeks.net. I'm not even on those anymore. So it's like
that's it. I'm not putting shows anymore because of my podcast, which is kind of comes and goes, and then weekly web tools, which is definitely dead. So I'm just going to put
when we go back and forth, do you put a QR code thing on there? I mean,
I saw some at the show, but
I think you do. I think you do.
What is a pod flash, Kyle? Daniel.
Oh, that's where I heard it. It was pod fasting. In other words, when you listen to, was that on your show?
It was on Podcasters Roundtable. We're talking.
It was on the Roundtable. Yes.
I'm a big fan of listening to. I mean, I watch Game of Thrones at 1.3. I watch it on my computer so I can play it faster because I'm trying to get through to, get the new episode's coming out Sunday, and I've got an episode. I have a season and a half because I'm watching I'm watching the whole show a second time. So I can get caught up for Sundays.
That was a good spot in the roundtable where you guys talked about the speed at which you
because Ray is like very anti-speed, and I'm like, dude, I laugh because I will go to bed listening to something at like 1.8 or 2.5 or whatever, and then I'll wake up in the morning and my brain's like, what is that fax machine noise coming out of your phone?
I'd have brain exhaustion. I couldn't. I've never been one to go to sleep with music or with people speaking.
No,
that's a great roundtable. Like that was a really really fun. Yeah.
It's been kind of fun. We've just been kind of doing stories and whatever, and that was one. So
Daniel ever coming back?
Eventually. Okay. We're keeping a seat warm. I know he's still working on stuff, and he just announced that he is shutting down Noodle Mix Network.
Okay.
Which doesn't really mean much because it's not going to look any different on the front besides the fact that everybody gets their own website now, and he's not doing all the back end and whatever else was involved with that, with advertising and things like that. So
right.
It must've been taking some time. I think he's just looking at like, okay, what can I not do anymore? That's not going to, that can give me more time, and he's slowly cutting away.
We don't do theme-based shows here, but we should do a theme-based show on the backside of podcasting, which is time. And so two
episodes, not this episode, next episode
on School of Podcasting.
Yeah, good. Because that's I thought about doing it. I thought about not doing it because it's not microphones and content. And I'm like, no, it is kind of because I found some really cool tools that have boosted my production. That basically will block rabbit holes. I can turn it on. I'm like, don't let me go to Gmail. Don't let me go to Facebook. Keep me off of social. Block Hulu. Block Netflix. I want to focus and get going. And so it's pretty cool. So I found some tools and just some general, how to prioritize and just the fact that you gotta family first. That's the big rock you got to put in first.
Yeah, but you got to figure out how to balance this stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
And when I had Sarah on my podcast, I asked her, like, why do you let me do all this stuff? Like, and she's like, I just don't like, it's okay with me. Like, it's something you like to do. Now,
that's it.
Some spouses would not tolerate the amount of time I spend. I mean, I'm here every Saturday morning. Yeah, right on. Right. I mean, you have
I've been through there.
I think it would be interesting to talk about. We always talk about the successes. So we've got whatever on fire. By the way, I saw another podcast this week that was something on fire. Okay. So
I would just all day just no.
But anyways, this is so funny. So, but that being said, I think it would be really good to have if you can have an interview show, talk about what went wrong. I mean, I know that's not super popular, but like what went wrong with your podcast?
What caused the pod fade? Yeah.
Where did you have trouble? Because I don't think we get so excited about this and we go headstrong into it and we're doing this thing and like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then we're like, our life explodes around us. And all of a sudden, you have somebody saying, hey, I don't see you anymore. You've heard that, right?
Well, not only that, but here's a fun. How long have you've been doing this? What, 10 years, Jim?
Yeah, almost 10. Coming up on 10 this December.
Yeah. When somebody says, "What did you do before podcasting?" Do you have to think about it? Like I know I was in a band before, and before that, but it's like,
I know, where did I waste my time?
Yeah.
Where did I waste my time? And you're just kind of wondering, I spent a lot of time on the lawn. Like that was before podcasting, my yard was everything.
I'm throwing the bike rack on as soon as we get done here.
Nice.
And gonna go. It's like 70 outside. I'm like, yes, time to work off this, because that's what I used to do. I'd get fat in the winter, and that's my new thing now. I'm starting to do my time episode, but you got to do like, it's funny now because it used to be I would go on the computer, and then I'll exercise later, and then later never comes. And I found that if I exercise first, I still get everything I needed done, because I'm now in a time crunch and I got to get focused. So,
Speaking of that, I got to get I have a podcast sitting in the queue that I normally have released by this point, but I kept putting it off and putting it off. After the week I had last night, I was like, I don't feel like, doing a podcast.
Yeah. But all right. Well, it's nice to be back, man.
No, likewise. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. We'll see you.
See you.
Take care.